Good morning. We are really thrilled that you've joined us for our Wednesday noon Bible study at Hood Memorial Christian Church. We are here in the sanctuary in our conference room. We have folks around the table, and if you're joining us from home, we're just really glad that you've been able to join us for Bible study and prayer time today. I want to mention first off, I got a call just a few minutes ago from one of our members who shared some information which I want you to know right now. Thomas Drug Store is going to have some vaccines, about 100 of those over the next week or so. And it is a great opportunity if you have not gotten the COVID-19 vaccine yet. The health department is providing some of those to Thomas Drug Store, and that will be by appointment only. So you need to call today or tomorrow morning by at least 2 p.m. or so tomorrow to sign up for the vaccine at Thomas Drug Store. This will be one of the safest ways you can get it. There will be no line, no waiting, because you'll go in at your appointment time, get your vaccine right there in the drugstore, and have no one else around you. So I just wanted to encourage anyone in our congregation or our wider church family that has not been able to get that vaccine yet, call Thomas Drug Store. I really should have had the number right here for you today. And I don't know. Miss Beulah is going to look it up and see if she has it for us, and we'll share it with you. But this would be a great way for you to go ahead and get your vaccine. It is the Moderna vaccine because it's coming through the health department. So we want to encourage you to go ahead and give Thomas Drug Store a call by 2 p.m. or so tomorrow, because they have to have their list ready tomorrow afternoon. Did you find it, Miss Beulah?
Not yet, but reminder that also at the food bank.
Yes. Also, if you are in need of any kind of medical screening or have any kind of questions, this Saturday, February 13th, day before Valentine's Day, at the Duma Help Center, right on Broad Street, only about a block from our church, we will be having a free medical health screening, COVID testing. It is the rapid test, and COVID vaccination clinic. Now, those vaccines, there'll be about 700 of those, and they are set aside specifically for the minority community. In Harnett County, we are lagging behind getting minorities the vaccine, and so those are coming through Campbell University, through the county, and the requirements of us giving those out do require that they all go to the minority community. So we encourage you to share that with any of your friends that might be African American, Native American, Asian American, and encourage them to go and get vaccinated this Saturday, February 13th, between 9 a.m. and I think we'll stop the line about 4 p.m., so most of the day on Saturday.
Do you have to make an appointment?
You do have to make an appointment.
I think so.
So call the Duma number, and you can get any more information and set up your appointment there.
I have the other number.
And the number for Thomas Drug Store is
910
892
2114.
2114. It takes a village to get it all together, and so we've got it for you today. Let us dive into our Bible study now. I just wanted to make sure we got that information out to you quickly. I have a passage that is at the end of the Sermon on the Mount for you today. We have been journeying through that for a number of weeks now. We come to the end of Matthew chapter 7 as Jesus concludes and wraps up the longest sermon that he preached that we have record of anyway. And it ends this way. Everybody who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise builder who built a house on bedrock. The rain fell, the floods came, and the wind blew and beat against the house. But it didn't fall because it was firmly set on bedrock. But everybody who hears these words of mine and doesn't put them into practice will be like a fool who built a house on sand. The rain fell, the floods came, and the wind blew and beat against that house. It fell and was completely destroyed. Now, I read this passage and I thought to myself, wow, I think I've heard this one all of my life. Since I was a child. It sounds simple enough, right? It's a great metaphor for not just hearing, but also doing. And it immediately reminded me of that great nursery rhyme, the story of the three little pigs, right? It's not the same story, but it's similar, right? You got the one pig who builds a house of, what was it, wheat or straw? The second pig who builds the house of sticks or wood. And then the third pig who builds his house of brick. And the wolf comes and huffs and puffs and blows the house of straw down, and goes to the next house and huffs and puffs and blows down the house of made of sticks, and goes to the third house and huffs and puffs but can't blow down the brick house. And so all three pigs get saved by the pig who built the house of brick. No, it's not the same story. This one's certainly more focused on not what the house is made of, but what the house is built upon and what kind of foundation the house has. Do you build on sand? Do you build on rock? Most of us don't build on sand or rock. We build on clay in North Carolina. And that's not sand or rock. It's kind of in the middle. So as I was reflecting on this story, I thought to myself, honestly, the truth is, when I think about it and I reflect on this story, I kind of struggle with it a little bit. I struggle with it because the story is so one or the other. You either do what Jesus says and your foundation is on rock, or you don't do what Jesus says and your foundation is sand. There is no clay. There is no North Carolina soil. It's one or the other. And the truth is, I sort of think that we've probably all built on some combination of rock and sand and clay. And I don't know if all my foundation is on rock or not. I certainly don't think it's all on sand. But let me explain. A lot of times, I think I've built upon rock only to find out that I was wrong. Maybe I've misunderstood Jesus. Maybe thought that I knew what Jesus meant when he gives us a teaching, but then later in my life realized, wow, I completely missed the point of that parable. I completely missed what that teaching was really about. I thought I knew, but later in life I discovered, oh my goodness, there was so much more to this story than I thought when I was a kid or a teenager or a college student or a young seminary student, or even when I was getting started in ministry in Charlotte. So part of my question is, who really understands everything about everything that Jesus has taught or every story that Jesus has told? And I'm willing to bet that if I asked you, has your understanding of what Jesus says to us changed over the years? In fact, I know I've asked that question before of many of us, and we all end up shaking our heads and saying, oh my gosh, yes. So then that leads me to ask, well, what then was our house built upon? Was it sand in the beginning? And it only became bedrock later when we got a better, deeper, more, maybe we think more accurate understanding? I don't know. Let me give you an example. John 3:16, one of the most famous passages in all of Scripture. We put it on our signs at football games and on T-shirts, and people love to go there. I was taught, probably what you were taught early in life, that if I believe in Jesus, then I will have eternal life. That's the most basic meaning of that passage, right? And yet I discovered later in life that the word that Jesus uses for belief in this passage is not simply about what I think. That the word Jesus uses in his own language is about belief with action. I shared a metaphor with you just a few weeks ago about belief with legs. So that it's more than what I think. It's also how I live and what I do and how I act and how I behave and the lifestyle I live is part of what leads me into the kingdom of God. So while at one point I thought it was just simply what I thought and what I said, I learned later, no, there's a connection to what I do and how I live. Does that mean that early in my life, when I thought that belief was only about what was in my head, was that foundation sand? I certainly thought it was rock at the time.
you have to consider your age?
Do you? Yeah. So those are great questions. Which to me, do you have to consider your age? Maybe it was rock then because I was young and I was growing and maturing, and maybe that rock hardened over time. Or that's a great question, and I think it's a question that on the surface, when we read this passage about the sand and the rock, that we would think, well, Jesus doesn't really answer that. So I got to thinking about this passage, and I got to praying over it and reflecting on it. And I noticed something in this passage that Jesus says. He says, those who hear these words and put them into practice. And it seems to me that it's the put them into practice part that's really important to what Jesus has said. Because, of course, everybody who was there heard the words. That wasn't really up for debate. They heard them. But Jesus is adding on to just hearing that you've got to put them into practice. Jesus didn't say you practice it right all the time. He said put it into practice. And that got me thinking about my background as a musician. When you practice something, you get it wrong much more than you get it right. When you take a piece of music, I was a trombonist, you take a piece of music that you've never seen before. Usually you start with what we call sight reading it. It means that you know you're going to make mistakes, but you're going to do your best to play it your best, recognizing that you've never seen this before. And you read it on first sight and play to the best of your ability. Usually when you sight read, you make a lot of mistakes. So after sight reading the music, you start to study it more. You've had a first look at it. You go back and you take a second and a third and a fourth look at it. You look for the melody and the phrases. You look for the climactic points. You look for where it's loud and where it's soft. You notice the spots that you messed up when you sight read it are probably the tricky spots that you're going to need to give some further attention to. And so then you start to break that piece of music down into smaller sections. And you play those small sections over and over, refining them each time so that you get better and better and better. You evaluate what you did, you replay it over and over again so that eventually your performance matches what you have heard in your head, matches what you think the music should sound like. I was taught as I was learning how to conduct and how to lead a band that part of the job of the conductor was to take the music, the score, you lay it out in front of you, and you study it and you study it. And you have to create in your mind a mental musical picture, if you will, of what it should sound like. And then once you've got that and you know what it should sound like because of your study and your preparation and you listen to other groups play it and you know what should sound like, you go then to your group, your band, your instrumental group, and you practice and you say, okay, what y'all did doesn't sound like what it should sound like. So let's work on this and this and this until the performance sounds like the mental image of what you should hear. All of that is called practice. You start out really poor, but you slowly get better and better and better over time. And even once you get to the point that selection of music, you're able to perform it the way that you believe it should sound, the way that you have understood it based upon all of your study, here's what every musician knows. You still have to keep practicing it. Because as soon as you take a few days off of practicing it, you start to go downhill. And if you don't practice for a few weeks or a month or so, you'll find that you now can't perform it very well. And so you have to start practicing again. The point is, practice never ends. It's ongoing. It's always, all the time. And this is the word that Jesus gives us. It's not only about hearing it, it's about putting it into practice. That's the solid foundation that Jesus is talking about. It's not that you hear it and you simply do it right the first time, every time, all the time. It's that you hear it and you try it, and you do it, and you realize, oh, that wasn't quite right. Let me go back and revisit that and try again. And over and over and over through the course of our life, we refine our understanding, we refine our behavior, our actions, our attitudes, and continually transform ourselves and conform ourselves closer and closer to line up with our best understanding of what Jesus is teaching us to do. That's the foundation that Jesus is talking about. Yep, go ahead, Miss Beulah.
Any activity, any time you with Jesus, you're not wrong.
Say more.
Any effort you make is a positive effort. If you're working to follow Jesus, every opportunity is a positive one.
On the way towards practicing, right?
Yes.
You know that it's not going to be great when you start off, right? It's not that you do it right, that you do it perfect. It's that trying matters.
Yeah.
So here's what the next thought this led me to. I enjoy the Star Wars movies. My kids do. And you know that famous saying of Yoda? Do or do not. There is no try. Jesus does not agree with Yoda. Jesus says, try and try and try again. Because the more you try, the closer you can conform to what I'm trying to get you to live. So I'm not sure Jesus and Yoda, I'd be curious about this conversation that they might have with one another. So when you go back to the passage, have you built your foundation on sand or solid rock? It's not as black and white as it sounds. It's not as either or as it sounds. It's not you either do it or you don't do it. You're either on sand or you're on solid rock. It's about practicing. It's about trying, knowing that early on, as you said, it's not so much that you're going to get it right, that you can even get it right early on, but that you try. It's the effort that you put into it. Because if you didn't practice and if you didn't try, that's the sand that Jesus is speaking of. It's hearing and then doing nothing. That's the sand foundation that Jesus is talking about. So, try again. The attempt, the practice, that is what matters. There's a saying that also came to my mind, and I'll close with this, that and my band director, John Enlow, had this written on the board in band class when I was in high school a lot. And as I was looking this saying up today, it's attributed to a lot of different people, from St. Jerome to Tim Duncan, and I don't know who said it. I don't know who originated it, but it goes something like this. Good, better, best. Never let it rest until your good is better and your better is best. The point is the practice. The point is getting better. The point is constantly improving, continuing to grow. But that if you don't start out doing something, then you can be sure that your house is going to blow away when the storms come. And you can be certain, the other piece that we could take some time to reflect on is how in this parable, it's not that a storm might come. The storm's coming. I think too often we think that if you give your life to Christ, all the storms Jesus will silence all the storms. No. This story, this parable that Jesus tells assumes the storm is gonna be there. That's a given. You can count on it. You can bank on it. The question is, will you live what Jesus is asking you to live? Will you try? So I invite you this week to just hold that in your heart. Maybe there's some stuff that's been floating around your head for years that you've never actually set out to try to put into practice. Some of that hard stuff that we've been talking about on Sunday mornings, connected to mercy maybe. Who knows what it might be, but I invite you to try. Good, better, best. Never let it rest until your good is better and your better's best. If you're watching on Facebook, we're glad that you've joined us. Thanks for doing so. We're going to turn to our prayer time now. If you'd like to join us for that more private prayer time, you can call in to our free conference call line at 563-999-1222 and join us there for a time of prayer. If you have a prayer request, you can send that to us through a message. You can text it to me. You can also leave it right there in the comments on Facebook, YouTube, or our website, and we will lift those prayer requests together as we join in prayer. Take care, and God bless.